Hey folks, welcome to the Leeds Gamer. Just before I get into the video, do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you could please give a like on the video, that'd be really appreciated. And do also remember to hit the notification bell so that you don't miss any future content. This video is relating to what happened with Southampton. They were caught cheating, they admitted to cheating, and they appealed against the decision because they felt it was too harsh a punishment. Their appeal has been rejected. What you see on screen now is off Southampton Football Club's official website, and this is their statement in reply to the rejection. It says as follows: Southampton Football Club has this evening been informed that the EFL's League Arbitration Panel has upheld the sanctions imposed earlier this week. As a result, the club will not participate in Saturday's Championship playoff final. This is an extremely disappointing outcome for everybody connected with Southampton Football Club. We know how painful this moment will be for our supporters, players, staff, commercial partners and the wider community who have given so much backing to the team throughout the season, and we apologise once again to everyone impacted by this. While we fully acknowledge the seriousness of this matter and the scrutiny that has followed, the club has consistently believed the original sporting sanction was disproportionate, a view that has been widely shared by many in the football community over the last 24 hours. We would like to place on record our sincere thanks to our supporters for the support, patience and loyalty that they have shown throughout an incredibly difficult period. We will share information as soon as possible in relation to ticket refunds for those who bought tickets to Wembley. Southampton Football Club has a proud history and strong foundations, but it is clear that trust now needs to be rebuilt. That work begins immediately. The club will reflect carefully on the events that have led to this point, learn from them, and take necessary steps to move forward responsibly. While tonight is a painful moment, this football club will respond with humility, accountability, and determination to put things right. Really. Okay then. So, what can I digest from this? Ultimately, if you don't cheat, you don't get punished, you then don't get kicked out of the playoff, and you then give yourself a chance of winning the thing and getting promoted to the Premier League so that you don't miss out on a £200 million payoff. Pretty straightforward to me. Ultimately, Southampton have admitted to cheating. They've admitted, Tonderek, the manager's even admitted that he was responsible for sending people to go and scout on other clubs' training sessions. So, if I was the owner of Southampton right now, he'd be getting the sack. Right now. No F's given. Quite frankly. At the end of the day, he's come out with the feeble excuse saying that he didn't believe that he was doing anything wrong. And quite frankly, he doesn't even see that it's morally wrong and that it devalues the overall effort that Southampton have put into the season. whether the cheating has resulted in a positive result or not, because the three examples that came out, Southampton didn't win any of those matches. But it doesn't mean that they were the only three matches that that they spied on. Or the three. It doesn't mean it's the only three instances where they've done the spying. It's just that those are the three examples that have come out in the wash. One of them even said that the people spying on Ipswich's training ground were all dressed in Eastleigh kits, because that's where Ipswich were training. So they've clearly, there has clearly been a lot of thought put into this about how to go about this element of cheating. They haven't just randomly said to some guy, go out, see what you can do, try and record whatever you can. There has been a thought process behind this. It has been very deliberate. It has been designed to disrupt the process. It's been designed to try and gain an advantage over everybody else. It clearly shows that Eckert is not a good enough manager to win things without cheating. He was even asked in his press conference, "Are you a cheat?" At which point he walked out of the press conference and someone in the background said, "Oh, come on now, you need to show some respect." Why would anyone want to show respect to a guy that has admitted to cheating? It's a bit of a dumb question, because he's not gonna respond to that question and say, "Yeah, I am." So the question itself is pretty dumb, and the person in the press conference who asked it is an idiot for asking it. You don't need Thunder Eckert to admit that he's a cheat. It's clear and obvious that he is. Now, some people may argue that, some people might come out and say, "Oh, well, Marcelo Bielsa's a cheat because he did the same thing." My argument against it is, while what Marcelo did with that particular instance may not have been a particularly savoury thing to do, at the end of the day, everybody else in football world should then learn from that, certainly anyone that comes to manage in England, and realise that certainly in the English league, we don't like that, and you'll get punished. Some people have compared or have tried comparing the difference in punishment, where Leeds got fined £200,000 compared to Southampton being kicked out of the playoff, and also starting next season with a -4 points on the board, 4-point deduction. The counter argument to that is that when Leeds, or when Marcelo Bielsa was caught doing it, there was not an official rule in the rule book, and it was that particular instance that kind of forced the rule book to add a new rule that says that you can't go spying on other clubs' training sessions without being penalised. However, the counter to that is that, from what I can gather, while it's been put into the rules that you can't do it, there hasn't been a fixed penalty put in place for if you do it. The other things to take into account is that with Leeds, as far as I remember, because it is a few years ago, it wasn't a playoff game. It was a league game. Whereas now, I could be wrong on that, and if I am wrong, I apologise. I've tried sleeping since then. But this is a playoff game, so giving a points to solely giving a points deduction to Southampton is pardon the pun, pointless. Because if Southampton had gone on to win the playoff and they start next season in the Premier League with a minus points tally, that ain't going to help them. It's hard enough starting on 0 in the Premier League, let alone starting on -4. And I think if they hadn't had this booting out of from the playoff with it, then there's a possibility the points deduction would have been a larger one. If you start with a larger points deduction, say for example if it were 9 points, which is the equivalent of 3 wins, you look at how bad Wolves and Burnley have been this season. Even how bad West Ham and Tottenham have been. You take 3 wins out of the equation, you're probably going to go down. And there's every chance that the amount of points deduction would have been larger had that not been the secondary part of the punishment. I don't like how certain things have been worded. For example, they say that they're losing 200 million or 250 million. They haven't lost it. They didn't have it to start with. So I'm not having that. They've missed out on the opportunity to potentially gain 200 million, but they haven't lost 200 million. So I'm not having that. There's lots of ways that this can be looked at, really, but I just think that in a very complex or complicated situation, you've got your main. Think of it like a tree. You've got your main trunk, which is black and white, effectively in a sense of this is what's happened and this is the outcome, and then you've got all the branches sticking out of this trunk, and all the branches are all these different possibilities and alternatives and opinions that don't mean anything now, really, in effect. It's crazy. When will clubs learn, or when will individuals learn that cheating never prospers? I don't buy into the bollocks that Tonda Reckitt's come out with, in fairness, to be honest. And while I empathise with Southampton fans, because it's not down to them, they're the only ones who lose anything here, in my opinion. Or they lose the most important thing, which is seeing their club succeed. So from a fellow fan of another club, from a fan point of view, I empathise with the Southampton fan base. But I don't empathise with the club, because the club, there's no way in hell that people within the club didn't know that this was going on. Harwood Bellis's celebration was this. And I'll make a really strong point on that. That twit, right? He deserves this punishment more than anybody for the way that he were against Luke Ayling. You do not discriminate against someone for them having a stammer. You just don't. So that disgusting waste of space, he's getting what he deserves, which is nothing. He doesn't get the opportunity to get promoted with Southampton now. Certainly not this season. So that I'm happy about. There's also lots of permutations outside of Southampton's view here. Obviously, Hull not happy about the fact that they were preparing for playing against Southampton. Now they've got to prepare for playing against Middlesbrough. You've got Middlesbrough's point of view that, you know, they missed out because Southampton cheated. Now they're back in it again. There's Wrexham's view, where Wrexham have missed out on the playoffs by a point. And if the 4-point deduction to Southampton was in place, then potentially they get a playoff place, and Southampton are knocked out of the playoffs. You've then got Millwall's point of view, where they're the other team that was involved in the playoffs originally. They feel affected by it all. But and then you've got some people saying that they should just simply promote Hull on the basis that they haven't cheated, so send them up. But they're not going to do that, because then all of the money that's involved in people watching the playoff, you'd lose it, and that's worth millions. That's worth millions to the TV companies and everyone else involved, isn't it? So a playoff will happen. So yeah, I don't know. I'm just glad that it's got now to do with Leeds and that it doesn't affect Leeds. The amount of crap that I have seen my club go through over the years, with, you know, multiple points deductions, for going into multiple administrations, and, you know, and the club nearly going out of existence because of it at one point. Multiple dodgy ownerships, you know, being relegated out of the Premier League for as long as we were. You know, this wasn't the fans' fault. This, you know, the Leeds fans love their club, just like Southampton fans love their club, like any fan loves their club. But ultimately, you know, it's always the fans that suffer the most in any of these negative situations, and I don't think that can be argued. Owners might miss out on opportunities to make more money, but let's face it, the owners of clubs in the top couple of divisions are not short of a few bob, are they? Otherwise, how would they have the money to buy a football club in the first place? So, you know, it's a difficult one, is this? But ultimately, I think that justice has prevailed in the sense that Southampton have been caught cheating, and we don't know the full extent as to how many games they actually spied on. They've been caught guilty for 3. They could have spied on far more, for all we know. And then, you know, who knows? Maybe that then would have affected how good a season Southampton had in the end in terms of their league position. Maybe they wouldn't reach the playoff without the spying. You know, there was comments made about how good they thought Thunder Eckert was. So there might have been some players who didn't realise that Thunder Eckert was actually cheating by getting the inside information that he got. But when you look at it all, they still weren't good enough to win the league or even come second, were they? So it hasn't resulted in them being, you know, one of the top 2. So, you know, effectively, what has all this cheating gained Southampton? Nothing. But it's made them lose out. So the only ones that have got anything to blame is themselves. You don't cheat, you get the opportunity to go to the Championship playoff final. I think it's that straightforward, personally. You don't cheat, you get your reward, you get your opportunity. And who knows, even if Southampton were to play in the final against Hull, what happens then if Hull win? Southampton have still lost out. You know, you're basing this on assuming or presuming that Southampton are going to win the playoff. You know, so I don't know. I'm going to leave it there, folks. Put your thoughts about this situation in the comments below. What's your take on this? Do you think it's too harsh a punishment, or do you think that justice has prevailed by the punishment of the cheating that's been going on? I don't know. You let me know. But in the meantime, do please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Please like the video and hit that notification bell. But hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Have a good one. Take care. Bye for now.